afternoon. You're tuned into Business Day right here on ET Now with me, Avan Nabash. Let's get in a check as to how the markets panned out this Thursday before we take you through the top headlines. Well, on account of expiry and squaring off of positions, etc., you had the markets, which were for the most part of the day deep in the red, managed to scale back and conquer 5,300. Volumes, in fact, that merits a mention given that it was the highest ever volumes clocked in at 3.3 lakh crore rupees. The advance decline ratio by the end of the day came in favor of the gaining side, and for the series, the benchmark indices gained a good 5%. Not so for the broader markets though. 53.15 for the Nifty on last count, with the Sensex shutting sharp, higher by 50 points at 17,541. We talk more about markets as well as individual stocks that have been impacted through the trading day after the top headlines. First quarter GDP numbers will be released tomorrow. An ET Now poll sees growth at 5.2% due to poor farm output. No immediate bounce back is seen as high interest rates and slowing demand is expected to weaken industrial sentiment further. ICICI Bank Chairman KV Kamath says India is facing the twin trouble of slowing investments and lower consumption. In an exclusive chat with ET Now, Kamath also says interest rates need to come down in order to boost growth. Asset quality fears worsen for the banking sector as high interest rates and lower profitability dent loan repayments. Corporate debt restructuring may rise over 60% this year to a whopping 3.2 lakh crore rupees. The government rules out deallocation of coal blocks for the delay in mining activities. Coal Minister Shri Prakash Jaiswal says an interministerial panel will take a final call after a review of the situation. Well, for the expiry, it was a very truncated day of trade, but by the end of the day, we managed to hold our head up high, and the benchmark indices ended in the green by just about 0.5% as well as 0.3% respectively. For the broader markets also, which were mildly in the negative terrain throughout the session, you saw good gain coming about for them as well. So higher by 0.6% for the mid-cap index, and the small-cap index saw a far lesser gain of just about 0.2%. In terms of movers, you had the real estate pack, which was in the limelight on the upside, as well as the healthcare pack. Metals and oils didn't fare so well. Some of the index gainers then, DLF featured on the list. IDFC did very well today, as did Hindalco and Jayaprakash Associates. But today, the two stocks in focus were Tech Mahindra as well as Mahindra Satyam, which was slam-dunked in the session before the closing day of trade. You had a cut coming in on Mahindra Satyam of 1.8% and on Tech Mahindra of close to 5%. A lot of pressure on the stock, and this on the back of the news that British Telecom, which had launched block deals to offload stake in the company, was settling for a discount. So let's get in the details and find out more about this trade. Nisha Podar now joins in from our Mumbai newsroom with the latest. Nisha.
That's right, Avan. Pretty much aligning with the kind of discount that the company British Telecom was giving for offloading its stake in Tech Mahindra. And that's what clearly happened on the stock exchanges today as well. On the stock, it was battered down by about 7% in the day and closed finally down 5.2% in trade. Remember, yesterday there were block deals which was launched by British Telecom, which holds 23% stake in Tech Mahindra, and said that 6 to 8% will be offloaded at a discount of 5 to 7%, and that is pretty much the range in which the stock was battered in trade today. And block deals did happen. In fact, there was quite a bit of demand for stocks of Tech Mahindra at those levels, and finally average price of 777.80 paise per share is the price at which Tech Mahindra shares were sold, and much larger than what they had anticipated. British Telecom, because of the high demand at those prices for Tech Mahindra stocks, finally landed up selling about 14% stake in the company from 6 to 8%, which they had envisaged earlier, and landed up raising $251 million instead of $150 million. So now British Telecom is left with about 9% stake in the company, and they'll be offloading that as well subsequently in tranches.
Okay, many thanks for giving us that perspective, Nisha. So the news clearly not going down well with the two stock prices which were down and out in the session. But to some of the other stocks in news then, Reliance Communications got a good fillip in the session as it won multiple orders worth 150 crore rupees from the government. Gati also notched up a good 1.5% as it will release all the pledged shares by June next year. The company also said that it is willing to sell majority stake in its subsidiary Gati Ship. MTNL, that counter cracked in trade today, and that was on account of some block deals which took place. 40 lakh shares of the counter were traded at an average price of 43.15 on the NSE. 4.2% of its trade did, all in all, traded in multiple blocks. You can see the deep cut coming in, marginal recovery, but still 6% off. And this for a counter which has done very well over the past 1 and 3 months. Tata Power in the limelight on the upside as the electricity tariffs have been hiked by about 10% in Thane, Navi Mumbai, and the tariff hike is going to be retrospective from the 1st of August. To Lanco Infra then, that counter got a good notch up in the session, higher by close to 3.5%. Reports indicate that it is in talks with PE firms Bain Capital as well as KKR in order to sell stake in its power business. And it does plan to raise close to $750 million for a minority stake in the same. Emphasis reacted fairly positively to its numbers. Net profits came in at 209 crores versus 189, above the street expectation. The revenues also were at 1,355 crores versus 1,329, with the margin seeing a little bit of a notch up at 16.75 versus 16.25. All of these results, remember, are comparable on a sequential basis. Orchid Chemicals plunged in the session on the news that it is going to transfer its penicillin and Penam API business to Hospira, which is a US-based company, for a sum of $200 million. All in all, for an expiry day, the volume certainly did surprise on the upside. We did manage to conquer 5,300. What was the F&O activity like? Who better than Navneet Saluja, who joins in from our research desk to give us the latest. Navneet.
Hi Awan, it turned out to be a good expiry in the last half an hour. You had the Nifty August futures expiring above that 5,300 mark, and if you look at the September futures, in fact the premium on that contracted because they closed at about 53.27, adding about 54 lakh shares in open interest. And looking at the option side, you had the Nifty PCR which actually inched upwards towards the last hour of the trade at around 1.18. Remember, during the day it slipped to around levels of 1, so you had a lot of put writing towards the end. So if you look at September strikes like 5,200 put, that added over 11 lakh shares. On the call side, you had maximum open interest addition seen at 5,300 strike, which added close to 8 lakh shares. And looking at the rollovers, Nifty rollovers stood at about approximately 55% towards the end. And in terms of stock specific, among the Nifty gainers, you had counters like DLF, IDFC, Hindalco, where fresh long positions were being built up. And some of the defensives like Cipla and HUL were also up and about in today's trading session. And on the losing side, you had Tata Steel, JSPL and GAIL, where fresh long positions were seen, and some of the mid-cap counters like Educom and Arvind recovered today, so fresh longs were seen there. And in terms of highest rollovers, you had counters like Tata Communication, Tech Mahindra, United Spirits and CESE, where a lot of open interest addition was also witnessed. And in terms of participation, also quite a good day. We did about over 2.5 lakh crore of turnover on NSE by the end of the day.
Thanks very much, Navneet, for giving us that perspective. So some of the big index losers for today, Tata Steel was down and out, as was GAIL. You had a JSPL and BPCL, which also featured on the list to end deep in the red. So how did the entire series pan out? Well, very good is what you would have to say for the frontliners. So you had both the benchmark indices, that's the Sensex and the Nifty, which notched up a good 5.5% for the entire series. But not in the same case, you cannot say for the broader markets. In fact, the mid-cap index was up by only 1%, so managing to stay afloat. But the small-cap index didn't even manage to eke out a gain, so off by 0.6%. To the index gainers, then the FMCG index, the healthcare pack, those were your classic defensives which really reared their heads up. 10% higher for the FMCG pack, the healthcare index also doing well, as did the entire IT pack, which saw a marked outperformance in the August series. Metals, on the other hand, they lost their sheen, off by close to 2%. Some of the big index gainers, take a look at Tata Motors, 15.5%. Ranbaxy also stood tall, as did TCS, and Unilever also gained a good 14%. On the downside though, Bharti Airtel, that was your problem stock, and for the entire series, it shaved off 19%. Hero Motocorp was off 11%. JSPL and Punjab National Bank down by 10% apiece. Well, that's how the equity markets panned out in today's session. Tomorrow, a very important day in terms of macroeconomic data. Apart from global events, the Jackson Hole meet, we have our GDP numbers which will be released.